Hello, my name is Gabby Richardson, and you are listening to The Nexus of Narratives, where we use stories to bring people together across different belief systems. New episodes are released every Monday on your favorite podcast platform, where I have a conversation with a guest about an obstacle that they faced in their life that invited them to take a look at their beliefs, whether about themselves or the world around them. We talk about how those beliefs were formed and how formative moments shape how we interact with the world. The Nexus of Narratives is what we will uncover through this story exploration. It's the common thread that unites all of us, no matter what our beliefs are. If you are an avid podcast listener, you know the deal. Please take a moment on the platform where you are listening to follow, rate, and review. Those little acts go a very long way in ensuring this important work reaches more people. In this episode, Chante and I discuss the fantastic complexity of her identity and how she has embraced a life challenging norms and living outside of binary ways of thinking. We dive deep into the wonderful complexity of humans and how tremendous it is to explore the depth of humans beyond, as the saying goes, judging a book by its cover. Certainly, this is a conversation that I will be coming back to as it was so impactful for me, and I hope you find it just as incredible as I did. Also, be sure to join the growing community on Patreon by searching Nexus of Narratives or clicking the link in the show notes. Chante, Rowan, and I had a wonderful conversation on social location, narratives, and how the foundation by which our systems have been built can be limiting the capacity of growth and transformation that many people strive for. So, without further delay, please enjoy this conversation I had with Chante, and I look forward to seeing you again on your public podcast feed next Monday or connecting sooner on Patreon. Hello and welcome to the Nexus of Narratives. My name is Gabby, and Chante, I'm so grateful to share space with you today. Thank you.
Yay. Thank you for having me here.
And so for us, this is a gathering again. So even before we start talking, I'll shamelessly plug that we have a full conversation on Patreon. For anyone who's not a part of that community yet, go and check that out. It's amazing. And Rowan was a part of that. What a delight. I'm so grateful to not only just generally share space with you as someone who I feel a great kinship and connection with already, and we've had so many incredible conversations, just someone who I resonate with on so many levels. And so we met through a virtual networking connection sort of deal. And what a beautiful connection it has been. So if you were to introduce yourself briefly to anyone, what might you say?
Well, first of all, thank you again for having me here. What do I typically say? Well, I start usually with my name. Hey, everyone. My name is Chante Martinez Thurmond, and I use she, her, or ella pronouns. What I like to do and be and say is that I'm a little cheeky, and I kind of am one of these people that loves to push back on tradition and conventional thinking, kind of an out of the box thinker. And that said, I reject the typical way that, what we see folks doing here in the West is introducing ourselves with titles and what we do for work. And instead, I try to center on the fact that I'm a spiritual being having a human experience in this life. And I know that people are still curious, what else? And I'll say in this life, I was born as a mixed race, Black Latina woman. In this life, I'm an eldest daughter. In this life, I am a mother of twins. In this life, I'm married to the love of my life. For sure, somebody I've known for thousands of years. I'm very sure of that. In this life, I grew up mostly in the Midwest. I would say, yeah, I'm a Midwestern gal. Field of Dreams, to be specific, over in Iowa, where they love football and burgers and pizza and Caitlin Clark. In this life, I was socially conditioned to be a Catholic and broke free of that. And now I'm a practicing yogi, more of a student of Eastern philosophy, I would say. And in this life, in terms of things that bring me joy, I love art and music and poetry. And I love basketball. Love playing basketball. Love watching my kids play basketball. And what else? I'm trying to think. Oh, I love like divination and metaphysical things. I'm really into tarot and astrology and numerology and reading your palm and, past life regressions. I mean, all the things. I could go on, and I don't want to bore you in this intro, but like, that's my jam. So that's probably plenty for now.
I love it. And tacos. That's
I love tacos. Tacos and margaritas. Yes, that is absolutely my jam. Yes.
I still have yet to do a past life regression. I'm so curious about it. I've been interested for a few years and I haven't given myself the space to sit down and give it a go, but that's very interesting. So we'll have to connect on that at another time too. So
I would love to. I'm here I love like when my friends go for the first time and try a new modality and they're like, oh my God, we got to download. So if you ever go, or if I come to visit you, because y'all got like great folks there who do this, right? Or we could like go to Sedona, Arizona. And that's another like, really amazing spiritual place. I'm your friend that you call when you want to like debrief and talk through it.
Perfect. Done. I love it so much. And a couple of cool things about you. I want to plug your podcast as well for anyone who's just an avid podcast lover. Work Won't Save Us. What an incredible set of episodes you have there and thing you have going for yourself. It's really, really tremendous and challenges my way of thinking about our culture and the way that work impacts it, and has certainly validated my spicy side of enjoying challenging the different systems and practices that have been set in place. And so it feels very validating for me. So yeah, go and take a listen to that.
Oh, thank you for plugging. Yeah, I forgot. It's like all the things that I'm doing. Yes, I really appreciate that. Love, Work Won't Save Us is my newest podcast. And really it's designed to explore work as an institution and our complex relationships to it. So every single podcast starts with like, the guest showing or kind of explaining who they are with their social location, explaining their definition of work and then their relationship to work. And then we kind of dive into a few threads that I've sort of either premeditated about and like I've been thinking about for a while, or let some things emerge. So it's a really cool show. Just finished up season 1 and I would love it if y'all could listen to it. That would be amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll definitely put a link to it in the show notes. So
thank you.
Right. Well, and without any further delay in your story, I would love to dig straight into what you're here to share and from wherever you'd like to start.
Yeah, I kind of touched on it a little bit, gave a few pebbles in the intro. As I shared, I'm an unconventional thinker. And I also like to challenge paradigms and what people perceive to be like hegemony. It's like this is how it is. This is what we take for granted. And this is how the United States works. Or this is how the world works. I'm like, I don't know about that. Do we have to just go with the flow? So, and I think, so that's how I'm kind of coming into the conversation. And I think that is informed by the parts of me that I was sharing. Like in this life, I'm born as a mixed race, Black Latina woman. I'm the eldest daughter. And my mother is from Mexico. My father is, his family and stuff is from the segregated South Mississippi. But somehow these two people found themselves in love, young love, in Iowa, where I grew up. I grew up there. And so here I am, it's curly hair, mixed race girl. People were always wondering who I was. When I was younger, I had like little braids. People could not, my hair was always slicked back and people would be like, what are you? And I remember the first time somebody asked me that, I probably had to be I was like 5, so probably kindergarten. This girl came and she's like, what are you? Your mom, like looking at my mom and looking at my dad. She's like, your mom's not white. I was like, no, she's not. And so I thought about it then and I was like, what's the big deal? But to this girl, it was a big deal, right? And she was white and she was really trying to figure it out. And she would just watch me. And so that was like the first sort of realization, right? And then as I got to be older, other things started to happen. Like my dad got into, he suffered from a really bad, like, I guess it's technically a traumatic brain injury when I was around 10. And this caused a huge shift in his personality, caused a lot of other problems in our life. But I learned that I had to have patience and understanding and compassion, and that what like you can't judge a book by their cover, right? So these like sort of things is like, okay, these two like formative memories stick out to me as times where I started to realize, hey, you can be a walking, talking contradiction. And like people are seeing you as one thing and you're actually not. Or like your dad can walk, but he's not normal. Your dad can walk, but he's not okay. These two things, like, right, really started to formulate in my little brain. The first time I could think back, I was like 5. The next big memory of like this sort of happening was like around the age of 10 when my dad got into that accident. And things really started to shift. And I was like, I knew it intuitively. I felt like I was like learning it. And there was a point in time where I was like almost ashamed of it for a while. Like when you go into your teenage years, right? You're starting to like, I don't want to tell everybody that my dad has this brain injury, which is causing him to be a poly drug user, which is causing my dad to be an alcoholic, and my parents are no longer together. You don't lead with that. But what meets the eye is not always what's there, right? Like all that glitters is not gold. All that, you see on the surface is not really what's below. And I learned that. Believe a fraction of what you see and hear, because there's always more to the story. And for me, that turned into this lesson of like contradiction. And then I think some people might get nervous about that contradiction, and they actually might like, try to correct the contradiction. And as I got a little older, and I was doing that, I was actually on my way to doing that, I think. In my teenage years, I was like, contradictory in the sense of like a really good student and like always doing the right thing. But I had some tendencies to do some shit that nobody knew, right? Like I was sneaky in my own way. Not as sneaky as my brother, or not as sneaky as so-and-so, right? Like I was on my way to like sort of like living in some ways double life and like hiding it, right? Being sort of hiding and sort of recognizing what people want and expect out of you, and to like show up as this thing and like sort of perform. But then something happened. My brother, when I was in my senior year, my brother got into a car accident. And I don't share this too often, but my brother got into a car accident. Long story short, a friend of ours died. My brother was accused of, this crime, and my brother had to spend time in prison. And it was one of that was a very important lesson, and another like really formative part of my life where, hey, yeah, on the surface, it looks like he's broken the law. He's a criminal. He's this. He's also my brother, right? He's also a person. He's also somebody I know who actually has an amazing, beautiful heart. He's actually one of the smartest, amazing, like smartest and like most sort of creative, thinkers I know, my brother. So yeah, like two things can be true at the same time, right? And I knew that. And I was learning that lesson at 18 years old. Right? It literally happened my senior year as I was graduating from college or from high school, going to college. And here's the funny thing. The day this all happened, not funny. My mom doesn't think it's funny. Here's the thing. So the accident occurred. I was supposed to be at the party. I didn't go. And I decided to stay home for a few reasons, but didn't go. So I couldn't believe my brother was at this party and got into this car accident and somebody died. I was shocked. And I was getting ready to have my graduation party. Okay. From high school. So on the like daily paper was a feature of me as a student who got this scholarship. And on the other side of the paper was my brother's story. And for my mom, I was like, that's a contradiction. And I realized, whoa, like at 18, I was like, oh, damn. I realized my mom is holding both of these realities at the same time. It's coming out of her household. It's coming out of our family. And who's more right or wrong? Who's a better child? Who's more deserved? Like the answer is not, we're going to choose one over the other. It's both. It's like a yes and. So that was like, oh my God, that experience to this day informs how I look at people, how I understand what's happening in their life. You can never, like I said, you can never judge a book by its cover. And to know that more than one thing can be true at the same time. So living in plurality and embracing the contradiction of life can actually be a gift. So those things have carried on with me, and I've taken that on. I've sort of, of course, as I got older and could like practice my own spiritual sort of beliefs, take on new spiritual beliefs, I did. And getting into like Eastern philosophy, non-duality, has really heightened that too for me. So yeah, I'll pause there for just a moment because I shared a lot.
That was incredible. I'm like, I can just listen forever, actually, and just keep listening. Just, wow. I can't imagine like quite the visceral reaction of having a literal snapshot of one piece of a human to create a story that someone could fill in the rest of who they are with. I'm just picturing this, like painting a picture of you as this like goodness and how incredible is this, accolades. And then someone might paint a picture of, oh, she's, perfect and all of this. And meanwhile, you're like, I'm spicy and fiery and rebellious in my own way. And then one bad thing that happened to your brother to then shape in this little snapshot to create a picture of his entire essence that someone might then judge. Like I can't imagine experiencing that as anyone in your family. And I think it's so powerful how that was such a visceral reaction for you. Say, yeah, this is a literal handheld representation of contradiction, duality, how things are so much more complex than what meets the eye on like a flip of a paper.
For sure. Like, and also it wasn't lost on me that like, that could have been me. Like I decided to not go. It could have been me. It wasn't me. And what I loved about what I still love about the story is that like, I'm one half step removed from that. It could always be me. It could always be you. Like, and that's what I think we have to lead with in life is like, I think this othering and like sort of way of the world that I see like people getting righteous and wanting to place blame or wanting to have like retribution against somebody for what they've done. Like, you're bad. Like, even right now in this political landscape we have in the United States of being like, if you voted for so-and-so, I am not your friend. I'm like, it's not as simple as that, y'all. Like, life is complicated. Life is nuanced. Like, And if you can get out of that binary thinking to recognize that, yeah, we are walking, talking contradictions, and we are full of plurality. We have multiple stories and narratives inside of us. Parts of, we have multiple parts in us that therefore have stories and narratives and therefore different realities. And so it's a lesson to constantly be learned. And I'm grateful that it happened to me at 18 as I was going to college. I think a lot of my friends were just, they didn't know what they didn't know. They couldn't even begin to realize what I was facing. And I was not much of I talked about things, but I also was really good at holding things back and sort of not giving them too much. They would read things in the paper and make their own sort of conclusions and ask questions and be concerned and all that. But I don't know that they realized the real complexity of what I was facing, or that my brother was facing, or that my mother was facing, my grandparents. This is not just happening to me or to my brother. It happened to our whole family. It happened to our community. Right. And the young man who passed, he was a young Black man who was from our community. So how do you get to choose and pick and choose who's right and who's wrong and who's, more deserving versus the other? People's lives, everyone's lives do matter, and we are who we are because of the people we're with. So yeah, I learned that lesson, and then that carried me forward through college. And I went to nursing school and could see the complexity of who people were in front of me, the patients and their stories. And I was always so interested to know more. So it's funny when we were doing rounds with patients. I remember I was doing my mental health, clinical for several months. And my first patient was schizophrenic. And they were there against their will. So there was a judge who put them, placed them on hold. And they, met this person who was just amazing and lovely. I loved meeting them. They were so cool. And I was having a great time talking to this person. She was lovely. And everyone's getting so mad at me because I wasn't treating her like her diagnosis. And I was like, what? She's a person with with multiple stories. We don't know. There's so many things that could have happened. I was appalled by the way that she was getting treated, and made me more curious to be people don't just get here. People come in with a whole backstory. We have no idea. And before I even understood the impact of trauma, before I could really sort of cognitively understand it and then therefore speak eloquently about it, I already intuitively knew that she was traumatized from something, and that there was just so much more to the story, so much more that met the eye with this person. And I was I will never treat somebody as their diagnosis. I will never treat somebody as what somebody else expects me to, just based on a label, based on a title or a role, or like I said, a diagnosis. I just felt it was just so shallow, and that sort of has continued in my career, and wasn't the reason why I got out of healthcare, but if for anybody who's listening and people who have spent time in healthcare, you understand that we have a bad tendency of treating people as their diagnoses, and treating people as we pathologize people, unfortunately. And that's really annoying in healthcare for me. I'm ugh, it's just not a comprehensive way of understanding people and those systems that they're a part of and why they behave or act the way that they do. So I think it's ironically, these lessons I learned as a young woman, as a young girl, it began to inform my sort of professional life. And once that got to a threshold I couldn't sort of bear anymore, I was okay, I got to pivot a little bit and to do something a little bit more meaningful. So it's been an interesting journey so far.
That's also incredible, because I've also noticed this complexity of people identifying as their diagnoses. And I think there's something so beautiful about, in your authenticity, you say, no, I know there's more. There's more to people. There's more to me. So there must be more to everyone else around me. And like from that authentic part of you to say, I'm going to challenge how other people say things need to be because there's something in me that says this isn't right. And that's extremely powerful. It takes a lot of courage, I think, to stay in authenticity and speak up when something doesn't feel right. And that's something I find extremely powerful as I listen to you, is I'm hearing and kind of picturing you going about your life, learning about the complexity of people and the beauty that comes with that complexity, and seeking to understand that complexity and staying committed, like fiercely committed to that complexity of people is so cool. Like, did you ever kind of question your own, that belief of yourself, or do you feel like you were always just like firmly cemented in that?
I love that question. I think I've always known that I'm a very complex person. Like, you know, I can remember being like a kid and people wanting me to be a certain thing. So for example, it's like I was really an artist, you know, as a kid. I loved drawing, I loved painting, I liked making things, and people would be like, oh my God, you're going to be an artist. Some people would say that. My mom would be like, no, I mean, she is an artist, but she's not going to be an artist. And I'd be like, okay. So it started there. But I'd be like, okay, first of all, like, art is, I am not art. Like, I mean, I am, but like, you know that I can do more than just art, right? Like I'm capable of so many things. And maybe it was helpful that my dad was always like, you can literally do anything and more than one thing. Like, he used to tell me that all the time as a kid. And I think he maybe did that because I was a young woman too. Like, he really wanted me to understand that I didn't have to be whatever somebody told me I had to be. And so I knew I was a complex person. I remember thinking many times back when people would be like, I'd be like, oh my God, they're clocking me so wrong. And so like, you're like oversimplifying me into like one category. It would come up in basketball and track. It would come up in, like I said, like these extracurricular activities and art, you know, in school. It would come up at work. And like, I was a young worker. Come up in relationships with people. Like, people would assume sometimes that I was like just Black when they met me. And I'm like, well, first, I mean, like, you're wrong, but also I'm so much more than a color. Like, let's be clear, so much more than a race. Okay. I'm a person, I'm a human. And that sort of awareness, I think, led to the natural progression of me being a younger woman and wanting to sort of get more contemplative, to be like, who am I? Like, they're telling me all these things, but who am I really? And who are we? Right. And so like, I started to get into that young. When I was in college, I really gravitated towards like Eastern spiritual philosophies. And I remember the first time I ever learned about polytheism, I was like, ooh, this is getting spicy and interesting. I love this, you know. And then as I got a little bit older, graduated from college, went to graduate school, I really got into my journey. And that like, I would go back to my younger self and sort of like do meditations of like healing my younger self. And I would remember being like, I've always known that I'm complex. I've always known that life is complex, for as far as I can remember. Like I said, more than one thing can be true at the same time.
I think that's incredible. I know so many moments in my life where I felt, maybe I should question the way that I see things, or question my own authenticity, or question like if the way that I'm reacting, or the thing that I believe, is it right? It kind of like gaslight myself in so many ways. And so that's another part of what I find so amazing about how you're like, no, this is what I believe about myself and the world. And I've had all of this evidence to support humans are complex and our stories are complex. And it is authentic for me to sink my heels into that belief and continue to compile evidence in that. And that's so extremely powerful. And I think of all of the different ways that I have loved the parts of me that are contradictory. I think I've recognized very recently that it's actually the parts of me I'm most in love with or proud of are the parts of me that I think don't make sense culturally or things like that. And I have an appreciation for, like, as I was growing up, I would want to play in mud and I wanted to play boy sports and I didn't like wearing dresses and I didn't want to look pretty. I wanted to get dirty.
Yes.
And
Same.
So, like, I think there was an opportunity for my mother to be like, no, girls do these things. And she didn't. And she was just like, oh, you like mud? Here, I'm going to get you a table that I found on the side of the road that has a cutout in it. And then I filled it with mud and I would just like play on we called it the mud table. And she still references it. And so, like, supporting that part of me, but then I like still went to ballet and tap and jazz as a little kiddo. And like, I'm pretty sure she did some extreme bargaining with me to be like, please just wear the dress to the holidays. Like, please, we're going to take pictures. And yeah, the part of me that would like, that I wrestled for a season in high school. And
oh my God, I
but
love
then
this.
also
that was so fun. That's what I mean. That's a fun fact. Like, I love
cool.
those parts of like where you're like, I wasn't expecting you to be like, yeah, I was a wrestler in high school. Are you kidding me? That's so cool. And that's a contradiction to like gendered norms, right? And like what young women should be doing in high school.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that's what I loved so much about it. I didn't last very long in the season because I injured myself, but I was committed to continue trying, even though I had torn ligaments in my ankle. I was like, no, I'll just wrap it up and then I'll be fine. But I was so extremely committed to how contradictory it was. And I learned, like, some of the things you were saying that I was thinking of me is like, I learned very young that I'm a very strong person. And so in wrestling practice, there was one day where part of training, we had to put someone of equal weight on our back and run bleachers. And I remember all of the boys like resting at the top, like, ugh. And I'm like, come on, let's go. You're holding me back. And they're like, what is she doing? This is ridiculous. Like, I think I almost lapped everybody on there. And I was like, oh, like, I'm strong. This is cool. I love this. And then that came back with me now. Like, I love weightlifting. I love strength training and picking up and putting down heavy things for no great reason other than like, I know it'll support my health in the long run. But yeah, I've absolutely loved all of the contradictions of me as well. Be like, yeah, I can get dressed up and wear a dress. I'm also going to wish I was in sweatpants the entire time.
Right. That resonates because I was as like a tomboy. I like played sports and I loved to wear baggy clothes. And, you know, I was showing my friend, my co-founder of The Darkest Horse, and my good friend Rada, showing her pictures of me when I was like in middle school. And she's like, oh, have you always been a little queer lesbian? I was like, oh, really? Is that what you're clocking me? She's like, yeah. I was like, oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's what I looked like in middle school. I was like, I was wearing a Bulls jersey in this picture with the hat on, like, you know, tearaway basketball pants or something and some Nikes. And my hair was like back. Like, I definitely looked like a non-binary kid today. And I didn't think anything of it. I just liked, that's like what I felt comfortable doing. But I do remember being like, when people would be like, girls should sit a certain way or girls should wear this, I'd be like, the minute that they said that to me, I'd be like, says who? Says who? Like, I always, that was my first gut reaction as a kid. I remember getting in trouble by my grandma because she like loved, like my mom's mom, my abuela, she was into like just making sure you had good manners, you know, and making sure that you sat proper and like things like that. And I'd be like, come on now, like, I don't have to sit like a lady. What the hell does that mean? Like, and so very rebellious in that way. And I think that it's funny because I have kids now. I have twins. And I can really see the parts of myself. I'm like, ooh, there's that. And I'm trying my best now as an adult to make sure that I don't make them feel bad for contradictions or make them feel weird or othered or whatever, or punish them or whatever. Like I'm really open to contradiction, and I love it and I welcome it in the work I do. I think it informs the work I do, like, because it helps me think outside of the norm, the paradigm, the tradition, to question all the time. Not overly question. Like, I think that can also be annoying when you're just like, I want to play devil's advocate. I kind of hate that, like, or just being a constant contrarian just for the sake of it. Like, sometimes that can be annoying, but I definitely enjoy the mental exercise of being able to hold multiple realities at the same time. I just think it makes me sharper. And I think that people who, like, when you're thinking about world, like really big world issues, it's really a good practice to think about multiple realities, because it increases your probability of being right.
For those of us, I think I would argue most people, we love being right. So.
Oh my gosh. We love being right to the point where it, like, that's what we're most committed to. And that's that it's that righteousness and the, like, which I think does come out of binary thinking. Cause you'd be like, well, this is right and this is wrong. Like, this morality. It's like, well, according to who? According to who? Which we have to always ask, and like, whose story am I sort of the villain in this moment? Whose story am I the hero in? Because at any given moment you will be those things, which is a contradiction. And realizing that we can be the same, like being either one of those or more in people's stories is really interesting and a good reminder for ourselves as adults, but definitely for kids.
Don't go anywhere just yet. We will be back with this conversation in just a moment. Thank you so much for spending your time with me here on the Nexus of Narratives. As you may know by now, it goes a long way to support the podcast by listening, following, rating, and reviewing. So if you have enjoyed the content, please take a moment to support extending the reach of this important work. While the public episodes of Nexus of Narratives focus on the stories of our guests, how their belief systems have been formed, and how to build connection, we keep the conversation going on Patreon. We've been building a phenomenal community on Patreon of peer connectors who are looking to build a more compassionate world together. Whether I'm continuing the conversation with a guest or digesting fantastic themes with my dear friend Rowan, there's a lot of great bonus content on Patreon, including additional benefits for different tiers. Search Nexus of Narratives on Patreon or click the link in the show notes to join the exclusive community. I look forward to connecting with you there. For more information on the Nexus of Narratives, ways to listen, opportunities to connect with me, or share a story of your own, go to nexusofnarratives.org. I personally monitor that site and the inbox, so it's a quick and simple way to connect directly to me. So whether you are a new listener or have been around for a while, I'm so deeply grateful for your time and commitment to this work. So without keeping you any longer, let's get back to the story. Oh, absolutely. And to build the muscle of comfort with that, I think is such an incredible thing. It makes me think about how I'm still working on not surrendering to my perfectionism or kind of this shadow side of me of feeling like I'm not enough. And in the way that comes up is, oh, I need to be perfect. Everybody needs to like me. And I need to make everyone happy. I need to be the hero in everybody's story. And to develop that enough self-assurance, like in a good way, and that security of self to say, I'm going to be the hero and the villain, and I can't control how other people perceive me, but I'm going to continue to show up authentically, and it's going to unfold how it's going to unfold. But at least through this entire time, I know I've been true to me, and I can't control what other people think about me. The moments where I can effectively do that, I feel the most powerful, the most secure, the happiest, because then I can sit with myself knowing no matter what's coming through, I'm me. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. It's still a work in progress.
I know that very well. And it is my goal now as an adult, like my 40s, this is my daily goal of being okay with being a villain and a hero in somebody's story. Because, for having twins, I think it's teaching me quickly. It's like one of them is going to be mad and one of them is going to be happy. And my husband's going to have a different, we're all going to have different points of view. And it is not easy to sit there. I'm not suggesting for any, people who maybe this is a new concept too, they might be like, I'm having a really hard time. It is hard. It actually is a practice to do this. And I think, I'll say this, one of the things that's helped me in getting there a little bit is I got into yoga. As I mentioned, I was really into the Eastern philosophy. So for me, the pathway, the entry point into the flywheel was yoga philosophy, not yoga asana, not like yoga poses and things like that, going to yoga class and hot yoga. No, it was the yoga philosophy because there's 8 limbs of yoga. And it got me into, I shifted from the philosophy of understanding here in my head to kind of getting into my body and recognizing that I needed to surrender. So because I will admit that I'm a Virgo, I'm the eldest daughter, I do like to be right. At least I was sort of on my way there, especially as between the ages of 10 and 17, 10 and 18. And which meant that I also, like you, perfectionist. And I think it's pronounced because I have ADHD as well. So I want to, perfection and making sure that I have, very beautiful, legible handwriting. And because I was writing papers before we had computers to print off of, I was writing, I still went to middle school writing papers and into high school, handwriting papers. Oh shit. Even into college, I was handwriting papers. Anyways. But I was a perfectionist is my point. And I still think there's a part of me who is a perfectionist who I have to work on her every fucking day. Sorry for cussing. Every day. I didn't ask. Can I cuss here?
Did we do this in the other one where I was joking? Yes, you are welcome to use profanity. We go into some pretty deep and dark topics sometimes, but then it feels a little silly to be but don't use profanity. But let's talk about all these really dark parts of life and being a human, but don't you dare say profanity.
Yeah, don't you dare. You keep it cute. Keep it cute. No, okay, great. Perfect. I'm in the right place. But I'm still a perfectionist. And so I have to work on this on a daily basis, right? And so part of my practice was getting out of my head and into my body. So that's when I shifted from yoga philosophy studies into the yoga asana, which is the poses, right? I was okay. And for me, it was Ashtanga yoga. I got into teaching or learning Ashtanga yoga, which really helped me surrender my body. And in the yoga tradition, we recognize that in order to be, a little bit more open, you do need to be bendable and flexible, which is why we use asana to soften our body, to sort of, there's a lot of fire in you, a lot of life force in you, to kind of, in some ways, help you surrender, to be it's like when you're in when you're at the very tail end of your yoga sequence, they say, okay, now you can lay down. Now you can release, right? Getting to that place on a daily basis, it's for those of us who have a hard time letting go of binary thinking. That was the whole point in yoga, is to sort of soften your body so you can soften your mind. So making your body malleable makes your mind malleable. And for some people, that's, if for those of who are listening who are already into yoga practice and you're oh, just knowing that this is a reason why they're doing this is to soften and to make your body more pliable, and therefore your mind. You are already halfway there. You can do it. And so for me, yoga has been a thing. I've also, once I sort of got in the flow of that, I went on to I would say more like advanced sort of philosophy. So for me, Advaita Vedanta, which is around non-duality, is where I've kind of founded where I found home and refuge in, is like to understand that I am, and that we are we're being, and it's not like I'm right or wrong. It's not like I'm good or bad, that I am. And that when things happen, it's like, okay, that happened, and it's accepting. We must accept it. And my job as a person, or a spiritual being living in my body, is not to be a constant judge of people, because that takes me off my path, my spiritual journey, my spiritual path. That's not why I was born, is to be a constant judge. I don't get paid for that shit. It actually doesn't bring me joy. It actually brings me more affliction in my life to constantly be bugged and this is a daily thing. My husband can tell you, because I'm always like, they're not, fuck, I read such and such and they're not fucking, they don't get it. Then I'd be like, oh, they do get it. It's fine. It's not for me to tell them that they don't get it. Who am I to tell them that? So it's like a constant thing for me. And I go journal about it. The minute I notice myself feeling righteous or more like moral than somebody, I go journal about it. And then I do, sometimes I do like meditation, or I, do a prayer, or I do something in my body to let go and to surrender. So I've moved from the like cognitive parts and like, going back and forth and arguing a point, to just focusing on what can I control inside my body, and therefore inside my reality.
That's really powerful. Yeah. And one of the things that stood out to me that I heard as you were talking, speaking through this, moving it through your body, but then also as you were talking about yoga, is the importance, in my belief system, the importance of moving out of your head and into your body and allowing that release. And I've learned that for myself more recently as well, the power of physically moving through feelings has been tremendous for me, which even this morning, as I was facing some moments where I was feeling mighty spicy, I was like, well, it's good that I'm in my garage right now working out. I'm just going to load up extra weights. We're going to see how far I can push the boundaries of my capacity. And I lifted a lot more weight than I expected to. And I was getting out of these movements. And I felt so great afterwards. I was like, this is a gift that I'm having these feelings as I am in the perfect space to let it move through my body. Because otherwise I would just stay trapped up in my head, spiraling. And that's my pressure cooker of emotion before I like snap and lash out. So that stood out to me because I felt relation.
Yes. I love that it stood out to you. I think, I wish, like, one of my wishes for the world is for people to be more aware of their body, to have more sort of somatic awareness, to be present to the feelings that arrive as a human, because that's one of the beauties of being a human, is that we get to have a variety of emotion. And like, that is sort of the thing that's coloring our life, right? It's like going from extreme rage to like joy on a spectrum of a day is like quite the journey, let me tell you. Or like, imagine like when you begin with your lover and you're like, I'm mad at you. And then like, going through the whole process and cycle of like, stop being mad to actually loving them again. That little vignette of a time is what life is. That's what we're supposed to do. And there's a million things you had to do in order for that to happen, but we're taking it for granted because we're not thinking about it. We're not aware of it. And it is quite a chore. to learn to be aware of it. But when you can sort of learn to isolate those parts of your day, those moments where you're doing that, it's like little vignettes, little illustrations of life, kind of like a microcosm, of in you that is the world, that is like what it means to be alive. And those are like the little things inside of you. All that you need to know about the world is already inside of you. Just take a look at a relationship you have and you'll learn all you need to know about the world.
That's incredible.
That's what's so cool.
That was just beautiful. I just want to sit with that for a moment. That was lovely.
Oh, thank you.
Quite delightful, which I think is also the perfect segue for us. And I think you've already touched on some of the questions that I typically ask, or not typically, that I ask everyone who joins the Nexus of Narratives, but I'll still ask anyways, is how can your story or stories create connection for people who have similar beliefs or experiences?
I mean, I think that it's natural for people who, we have affinity for people who look like us, who maybe share a certain part of our story. That's natural. I think I'm looking towards people who maybe don't have any affinity with me, to open their heart space, to hear what I'm saying, right? To like look beyond just even this conversation, to know that I'm maybe just a vessel of a person who's sharing something, a vantage point of the world, because there's a whole communities of people who think like me, who are like me. And so, I would like to say that whether or not we share affinity, you can hear the truth, because no matter what I say, or no matter what somebody else says, there's always truth in somebody's, what they say, no matter what. And I don't know if I'm answering your full question, Gabby, so feel free if you want to ask it again, but like, that's what came up for me as you asked.
It's okay. You actually started to answer a future question, so that's okay.
Okay. Living in the future. I love it.
Yeah. And for, thinking of someone who might be able to relate to anything you've said, what might you say to a past version of yourself, maybe speaking directly to you or to them? Everything is an illusion. I say this often. Everything, my dad used to tell me that, and my dad has passed now. My dad, has told me that as a kid, told me that, when I was a teenager, a young woman, and he left it. I found a note of his in his briefcase that I took when he passed that said that. And everything is an illusion. So you can't take yourself too seriously. You can't and because everything is an illusion and it's a version of a story or a part of a narrative that because there's multi-narratives happening in life. I hope it can release you from the desire to be right, from your attachment to being right, because that attachment to being right is what causes us pain and suffering and what they call affliction in the Buddhist tradition. It really will pain you for the rest of your life if you're so committed to being right, or you're so committed to, doing the right thing or meeting the right person at the right time, right? And so we get attached to that. And I think knowing that if you know that things are an illusion, even this, I'm Chante, my pronouns are she, her, yeah. I live in Illinois. Yeah, well, that's who the government says I am. The United States government. Is that who God thinks I am? Is that, and those, it's an illusion. It is. And as they say, you can't take it with you when you die. You cannot take it with you. None of this. You can't take your name with you when you die. You don't get to take your identity. Let me get that social security number, my good credit. No, honey, you don't. I'm looking forward to leaving my all of my debt behind. Bye. But it's an illusion. That's so powerful. I feel like, just for the sake of time, I'm not going to go down all of the tangents that spiraled into my head, but maybe for another day.
For another day, we will. We can go through every illusion we have.
Got a lot of them. And whether now or at any of these points in your story, what did or do you need to feel connected to people around you?
In order for me to feel connection with people, I have to let go of the narrative I build of them ahead of time. Because you clock somebody within 30 seconds of seeing them. We create stories and bias in our mind. So I have to work on that on a daily basis. I work on that practice. So I let go of who I think they are in order for me to connect with them. And when I find myself filling in the blanks a little too much, I pause, I stop, I do a quick little micro meditation in that moment. They don't even know I'm doing it. But that's how I get to connect with their soul beyond who they say they are on the screen. I look beyond their little LinkedIn, shell of a, straw person. I look beyond what they told me they think that they do in this world. I'm like, who are you really? So I'm constantly looking for that and trying to sort of peer into their soul. And that is not something that they have to do. It's something that I have to do. And that's the lesson here is it's the daily practice of, no matter what they say to you, you have control over understanding how you understand yourself and how you're interacting with people before you, around you, people you never even met before. We do this as we're reading stories about people, y'all. And then therefore we it's like when you read a fictional book and you get introduced to this character, you start to put together shit in your head. You're like, damn, this person's a villain. Only to find out that they're not really the villain, right? And when you're reading from the villain, you miss key elements. So that's why you have to read certain stories many times or watch a movie many times. There's I was just talking to my therapist earlier today. We were talking about the last Avatar, the Airbender, and the firebenders are the villains. I was like, but are they really? And so when we learn that, when we assign somebody that early on in the conversation, we start to see them as that. And that's what causes a lot of pain and suffering in the world. That's what's happening in the United States. Right? Oh, I see. Pilgrims came to the United States. They called themselves pilgrims. Other people saw them as colonizers. But they said, oh, I see these native people here as savages. They don't count as people. I see these black people over here in Africa. They're not a person. They're livestock. And then we build a narrative and we build a whole society, a whole reality based on that narrative and lie. What would this life and world be like if they didn't cling to their belief? What if they were okay with being wrong? What if they were okay with multiple things being true at the same time? This is what can make or break our world, our lived experience right now, unfortunately. So I think this is a really big, amazing philosophical lesson to learn. And the younger you can learn it, the better, because you'll have more advancement. Now, hopefully you're 20 years old listening to this. You'll get the hang of it before I did in my 40s.
Mm-hmm. Or me, in my 30s, just starting to open my eyes to the beauty in the complexity of people and the constant work that it takes to release that binary thinking and judgment of people. Mm-hmm. It's a daily practice for me.
It's a daily practice. One of the things also, I'll say this too, with my team, people we work with, is getting in the habit of saying, how might I be wrong? How might I be wrong? That leaves room for people to correct you if you've made assumptions and bias and everything. If you're filling in the narrative based on your world experience, it leaves room. It also leaves room for you to pivot when you are headed down the wrong path. When you're not headed where you wanted to go, it leaves room for you to pivot. How might I be wrong? Is a really great question you can ask yourself every day, especially when it comes to working with people that's critical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. About 1,000 more tangents I could go with that one too. But what a beautiful way to answer that question of, just to put it in a tiny snapshot. What I heard was, in order to build more connection, I need to release judgment. I need to be open to the complexity of people. It's not what other people need to do for me. It's how I need to show up to support the betterment of others in the world and the systems and the subcultures around me. That's so powerful.
Right.
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you.
And last but not least, I feel like you've already answered this, but I'll ask more specifically anyways, is how can your story create connection for people who have different beliefs and different experiences? And dare I say, if they're still listening and they're like, these two have lost their minds.
Yeah, for those of you who saw me and built a story about who I was before you heard me talk and you got to this point, thank you for staying. I'm really curious what they've learned about me, about themselves, the world, in listening to the story. And I think one of my favorite things is to connect with people who don't look like me, people who don't think like me, people who don't have the same life as me. I think I learn the most from people who are different. Like my heart space is like wide open to that. I don't shun that or shun them or run away from them. I actually walk towards them and I welcome it, because I'm like, that is what it means to be complex. That is what it means to be living in plurality. It actually enriches my life and my living experience if I can meet people who do not look, think, act like me. So I hope that if you didn't think we had anything in common, that you can find commonality in some of the parts of my story. And I mean, I'm not hard to find. People want to talk, I'm down for that too. I think sometimes you have to be like, I think of myself as kind of like a Tetris. But in Tetris, when there's like I can't think of the piece where it's like, there's the piece I'm thinking of where it's a connector block in a way. Like I'm kind of that. Like I like to be the bridge or the conduit for people who have historically had a rough time connecting with people. I'm like, come hang out with me. I'm pretty certain we can get you there. I'm pretty certain we can help to reset and to heal your heart and heal your spirit. Because I genuinely do care about people. And I can find goodness in anybody. I believe everyone has the power to change. Everyone has the power to be better. Everyone has the power to be both good and bad at the same time. And I'm okay with that.
That's just delicious. I want to use the word delicious. I too share the belief that people have the power to be good and bad in any moments in their lifetimes, given different situations and circumstances. And I also believe in the power of humans to change and evolve. And I think that is one of the most powerful pieces of the human experience, to experience that for ourselves, but then also experience that in other people, is, I believe, one of the most powerful things. And I do fully believe it's possible. And I always have faith in that for people. So,
yes, I'm glad. We need more of us. We need more of us to think like us. More people on the planet to think like that. Because I think we're facing times where we're going to be in for a lot of change and transformation. The dark night of the soul. I mean, we've been here many times as a humanity. It's not like the first time we've ever had a big difference in a society. But I think right now we need more people to be open and to sort of live in the comfort of knowing that you don't have to be right or wrong all the time. Let go of that. We're going to be here for a while. If you want to be here till you're in your 70s, 80s, 90s, you better get used to it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, as we're at the end of our time, is there anything else that you would like to share before we close this out?
I think one last thing that like helps me is there's a practice of constellations. Like when you recognize that when you're looking at a problem in life, imagining yourself in relationship to that problem or to that thing, and thinking of it as a constellation of like, it's me and you, Gabby, and like whoever we represent in our communities, can help you understand that like you're looking at this thing from one aspect. It's kind of how planets are, right? Like when the sun trines the earth, when the sun trines whatever, planet. So recognizing that we are in a constellation, we are like many constellations, and we are in a universe, and we're actually there's multiverses. So thinking of yourself in space and recognizing where you are in relationship to somebody or something that you're experiencing conflict or, difference from, can help you understand that I'm only looking at it from one aspect. If I moved over here, I'd see it differently. If I moved opposite, I would see it completely, like recognizing in space and time, like thinking of it. And for those people who are like more visual thinkers, I think exploring that can be really helpful as well.
Absolutely. And a visual example that I could think of, if anybody is looking at the video, is to say, we've done this in a personal development class that I've been in. I'll just have to use this. Is if I'm to hold this up and I'm to say, what textures do you see? Then you might answer with like, oh, it's kind of flat. It's got some like lines on it. Maybe like that's where a battery goes or something. But for me, what I'm seeing is white, gray, black buttons. I'm seeing different textures, but it's the same thing. It's just the other side. And that has been an extremely powerful metaphor for exactly that. If you change your perspective, you might actually be looking at and thinking about and talking about the same exact thing. Right. And to get curious about that, as opposed to saying, no, I see buttons. I said I see buttons. Don't you see buttons? Instead, if we can take that step back.
Yes, exactly. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Like, that's a great, like, I was like, ooh, I loved how you turned around. You're like, just kidding. It's not gray and flat and it's buttons. And it's like, yeah. And the people who put that together also have a different point of view of that device you just shared. So, getting up and moving your position can take effort. Sometimes you have to get up and move. Get away from people who have held you back. Get up and leave that job. Get up and leave that relationship. Get new friends. Change countries. Sometimes it does require that. But also know that you can start for free with working and, making your mind more malleable and getting into the habit of sort of visualizing this, is powerful. So we all need a little bit of something different. What's good for me is not always good for you. And that's another lesson here. Mm-hmm. We all need different doses of this. We have different titrations, different realities.
Absolutely. This has just been so absolutely tremendous. So thank you, not only for your time, but for your vulnerability, your openness, your authenticity, your sweetness and your spice, your complexity, your dualities. I'm so extremely grateful. And this has been incredible.
I appreciate you inviting me. It's an honor to be here. I look forward to more.
Yeah. I'm sure more conversations to come. We'll find some little nuggets of time to talk about something.
Of course. You know where to find me.
Oh, absolutely. And any excuse for you to come out here to Colorado, or if I'm ever in your area.
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah, we're gonna go have margaritas.
Tacos, and do past life regressions or something.
Yes. I was gonna say we're gonna go have margaritas and eat tacos and talk about past life regression. So you beat me to it.
Haha. All right. Well, thank you again.
Of course. Thank you.
Wow. What a tremendous conversation that was. So thank you for taking the time to listen, and I hope you were able to find many moments and nuggets of wisdom, as well as actionable steps to build connection in the spaces all around you. This is an extremely grassroots production, so thank you to my dear friend Rowan for their commitment to this work and support in leading fantastic conversations on Patreon. So be sure to join the Patreon community and enjoy that additional content. And thank you to my sweet and talented husband, DJ, for editing the audio and creating the music that is used in this podcast. Now, let's go out into the world and create some connection.